What's up, ego hackers? It's CS Joseph with csjoseph.life doing another episode for season 21. I haven't been around, mostly due to injuries and day job related activities, such as going to Dallas-Fort Worth and having a bunch of fun with my coworkers at the Tech Expo, which is a pretty fantastic trip, if I do say so myself. But be that as it may, I had the opportunity to meet with some pretty cool ISFPs during the trip, my coworkers. And I thought, maybe it's time I actually produce the lecture on how to social engineer ISFPs because, ISFPs put in a lot of time and effort into social engineering the rest of us, so why don't we just figure out how to social engineer them? And now, wait a minute, you're like, wait a minute, ISFPs really going out of their way to social engineer other people? Absolutely, folks, absolutely. The thing is, though, is that most ISFPs aren't exactly aware that they are doing it because, it's all about what they believe, not necessarily about the facts, etc. So with that being said, let's discuss a little bit about ISFPs, who they are, where they come from, what they are all about, and then we will dive into social engineering. Hopefully we can keep this lecture a little bit short due to mounting criticism about my lectures being too long. Hey, I freestyle it. My best work is done when I freestyle instead of actually outlining everything, which is what everyone wants me to do. It's like, okay, how about I just have a loose plan and just kind of go with it, if you know what I'm saying. So anyway, the ISFP, let's talk about their interaction style. So their interaction style is informative responding control. This is also known as the background, or AKA behind the scenes, according to Dr. Linda Barron's interaction style for the ISFP. And they're informative, which means they prefer to beat around the bush instead of taking that more commanding presence, that commanding approach, and then tell people what it is they want or tell people what other people should be doing and using as few words as possible to do it because they're just being straight to the point. Whereas but in reality, they're very informative. They like to beat around the bush, and they do this because they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be seen as, someone who's overly abrasive or someone who's, hurtful or disrespectful to other people. So they decide to take a more informative route. I mean, I would know because I too myself am informative. Fair enough. They're very responding. They prefer other people to come to them instead of them going to other people. And they're very control-oriented, which means they like to keep things under control. They go at their own pace, but they are also very outcome-focused. It is not being process-focused, which is a movement type. I'm a movement type, so I enjoy focusing on the process and developing a better process, a master process for solving any issue or completing any task. Whereas an ISFP ends up creating an individual process for every single outcome in their life, and then as a result of that, it takes a lot longer to complete. But their task completion is actually more accurate in the end, and they kind of end up having better results in the long run over someone who necessarily is very process-oriented. It's basically you're trading accuracy for speed, basically. Remember, folks, you can only do things cheap, fast, or right, and you can only pick two. Or as my shop teacher, Mr. Swartz used to say, neatness and accuracy, folks, not speed. And he was definitely an ISFP. Very outcome focused, that individual. Very fun class. I enjoy technology class. We got to make our own motors. It was amazing. With that being said, that is their interaction style. That's why they're very behind the scenes. They don't really like being in the spotlight, and attention being put towards them can make them uncomfortable. However, if they are in charge of something or they are directing attention with their ENTJ subconscious, they can actually get off the attention. This is why we have so many ISFP-oriented country singers these days out of Nashville who are making it big or getting lucky, as ISFPs would consistently say. But in reality, that may or may not be the case. It's just that they like to drive attention because it's all about their artistic skills conveying a type of experience that leads to a fantastic performance, certainly. Their temperament is the artisan temperament, and I enjoy the artisan temperament because it's extremely creative. It's all about being a freedom-based creator, which means the ISFP needs to have freedom of choice at all times. If you take away their choice, they will instantly rage, because taking away an ISFP's choice is inhibiting their NI child, because NI is connected to their SE parent. The SE parent rages and becomes very angry. In order to protect the child, basically, that parent will move any obstacle in the physical environment to make sure that the NI child always has a choice within that situation. And then that's, you know, from the perception point of view, but from their decision point of view, it's actually more from a moral perspective. But more on that in a minute. So temperament-wise, very you know, like I said, freedom-based creators, but they live in the moment. And remember, when you live in the moment with your extroverted sensing being so high, this is what causes ISFPs to be so forgetful. Remember their introverted sensing, which is their long-term memory. That long-term memory really is, and also their sense of duty and loyalty, etc. It's pretty low because they're so willful with their NI child willpower. Their SI critic puts them in a situation where they can become very forgetful. However, because it's so critical, ISFPs, like ISTPs, walk around basically feeling like they can remember everything, and oh, I only remember what's important, etc. And they will not, very few times, seldom admit that what they remember is not actually correct. Although that is more of an ISTP issue, not so much an ISFP issue, because of TE inferior. The ISFP is definitely, more often than not, willing to admit that they're wrong, whereas an ISTP is not so much. Okay, fair enough. I guess that makes sense when you have TI hero, and it's like, TI hero can be like very arrogant and is trying to get everybody else to listen to it instead of it being willing to listen to anybody else. I mean, welcome to TE nemesis. It is what it is. So temperament-wise, they are an artisan. Now, cognitive axis, well, they're part of SFP, NTJ, Quadra. SFPs are, they're all about performing. They're all about, being creative in that regard. Although, like, as you can see, like with these paintings, these come from an ISFP specifically. This is from an ISTP, but these paintings are from an ISFP. And, you know, that's Raylan. Raylan is an ISFP. And they're fantastic work, and it's all about conveying that feeling. Your art is basically to show kind of like an abstraction of reality, whereas, like, you know, these are kind of like metaphysical sketches about a what-if situation, but it's still based on reality, which is the extroverted sensing way. You're taking something that exists in the physical environment within physics and then molding it and bending it to your will. That's how extroverted sensing works. It takes the physical environment and they're bending it to the will of the NI child, but they're also following a system with their TE inferior when they do it, and it's this system, this artistic system, which they end up developing an artistic style. This is why you can listen to many artists with music and whatnot, and just by like listening to like a certain twang of the guitar and whatnot, you can instantly know the specific artist it is, based on also their specific instruments or ways that they go about their chords, etc. You just happen to know, oh yeah, hey, that's this artist and he's playing this instrument, with this band, etc. And maybe even at this location. For some of you that are way better extroverted sensing than I am, because I have SE demon, so that kind of sucks. But yeah, like it's like ISFPs have this unique signature style about them when it comes to art that they produce, and they're all about producing art and manipulating the physical environment around them in some way, shape, or form. This all comes from the mechanical prowess that they have. Now, when I say mechanical prowess, a lot of the ISFPs that are watching this right now are getting triggered because they're like, ow, I don't know how to change a tire, or I don't know how to change my oil, I don't know anything about cars. Mechanical prowess also applies to playing the guitar. It also applies to playing the piano, for example. It applies those things. It applies to dance. It applies to jokes, for example. ISFPs have these capabilities. Mechanics really is just, while people think it has everything to do with anything mechanical or has to do with fixing cars or motorcycles, etc., not always the case. Sometimes it has a lot to do with anything physical, and sound and manipulation of sound is physical. For example, look at Hans Zimmer, right? I mean, come on, ISFP AF, or is he ENTJ AF? We'll have to find out on a How to Type episode in the near future. So yeah, cognitive axis. So they're very moral. And they do this with their belief systems, so their TE inferior. They're very afraid of what other people think of them, and they draw their self-worth based on their status or how others think of them. This is why, if you guys watch that recent Bradley Cooper movie talking about, like, you know, with Lady Gaga, kind of retelling that story from Lady Gaga's point of view, that Bradley Cooper character was an ISFP who became jealous of his woman becoming a star, becoming famous, because he's like, well, I want to be famous too, etc. Or I had that capability before, and trying to get his day in again, right? And when it's like, wait a minute, am I a has-been, etc. And it's that whole point of view from the ISFP. He felt bad about himself because a lot of people were disregarding him. People were not giving him a chance. People were thinking less of him. So he felt bad about himself because these are in cognitive axis with one another. And we already talked about the axis relating to extroverted sensing, parent and I child. And there's also additional axes here in the unconscious, being worried about how other people feel, which is one of the reasons why FI Hero is so sympathetic. Sympathy means you are feeling by someone. It's not necessarily feeling for someone, etc. Or wait a minute, excuse me. Sympathy is you are feeling for someone. You are having feelings because somebody else is hurt, whereas extroverted feeling is you are actually feeling exactly the same feelings that somebody else is feeling. They're equivalent. That's extroverted feeling. There's equivalency there. But introverted feeling is about having your own set of feelings as a result of seeing someone successful or seeing someone suffering, etc. That's kind of the difference that it adheres to and whatnot. So just a slight difference there. So anyway, social engineering. One of the things about ISFPs that really, really grinds my gears, hashtag Peter Griffin, you know what I'm saying? One of the things that really grinds my gears about them is how inherently manipulative, thought manipulative, ISFPs can be. These people understand narrative unlike anybody else, because from their point of view, like, they don't really give a damn about what's true. They only care about what they feel might be true, because remember, you have the cognitive axis between FI and TE here. It's all about what they feel may be true. It's all about what they believe, because belief is everything to an ISFP, and what they believe. And they're the people who would typically say, well, that's your truth, but that's not my truth. I mean, okay. If anyone says that to you, that's bullshit and like a lie. There's no such thing as, well, that's your truth and that's my truth. Guys, there is a such thing as absolute truth. It's best if you just accept it now. But because absolute truth does exist, so also because logically speaking, if absolute truth does exist, then the absolute good also exists. And that's what FI Hero is all about. FI Hero is trying so hard to become the absolute good and tries to exhibit that high moral standard, that high moral principle, and having a set of principles coming from extroverted thinking, and those principles are created as a result of the moral feelings that the ISFP has. And then it conveys these ideas to other people through these principles. Principles are ideas. It conveys it with other people, and it shares it with SE parent, saying, hey, you should, you are obligated to think this way about things. And sometimes, because of how informative the ISFP is, they can't just directly tell it to somebody, unless, of course, they're in their ENTJ subconscious. Then they will directly tell somebody. But in reality situation, they end up deciding to create art instead to convey that message, right? Because their art is inherently informative, trying to convey a message about the reality of the situation. What if it's people suffering? What if they're creating art about homeless people? What if they're creating art about how they feel, about pain in their life? How many times have we seen SFPs like Taylor Swift making music about failed relationships? ISFPs are no different. They do the same thing, etc. This is like Amy Mosley, the former, I'm bad with names, the lead singer for the band Flyleaf, for example. She is an ISFP who recently typed her and whatnot. But you just look at the lyrics. She's trying to informatively convey a message about her belief system, TE inferior, and convey that message through SE parent, but doing it informatively, not directly, such that you potentially change the thinking and the ideas and the hearts of the people that are actually listening to her music. And she's doing it in a supportive way, but she's also taking charge because she is the leader of her band, basically. As the leader of Flyleaf at one point in time, for example. So understand, like this is what ISFPs do. Now, when ISFPs are aspiring, they do it with their ENTJ subconscious, and they're able to take charge. We actually have an ISFP who watches this channel consistently, and he is a leader of a band, or was a leader of a band. And he's like, hey, I always have, I'm the one driving the bus here. I'm the one always taking charge. I'm the one who's conveying that sound or the message or the lyrics, or I'm the lead singer. I'm the lead guitarist. I'm literally in charge of this artistic production here, and all these other people who are in this artistic production with me, or this band with me, they need to do it my way. Because if it's not my way, and I child, and if they are not doing what I tell them to do, SE parent, they're going to think that this is really, they need to think about it this certain way. Otherwise, we are going to perform badly, SE parent, and I am not going to feel good about that. So I have to take charge and become an ENTJ and lead this group. So I know for a fact that the artistic system, the artistic process that I have created is going to generate the art that I want to create, so I can convey that message I want to convey. Such is the way of an ISFP, the artist. This is how they work, folks. The difference is that their TE inferior sometimes can aspire and become extremely powerful in TE and can lead to thought manipulation. I'm sorry, but ISFPs are amazing at thought manipulation. Actually, I had a conversation with one recently where they had some secrets, and there were some people in their life that they should have shared those secrets with, but were afraid to do so because they are afraid of what those people would think of them. And then as a result of being unwilling to share those secrets, some people, we'll call them bad guys, were actually getting away with doing bad things because of their unwillingness to speak, because they were afraid of being embarrassed. See, FI hero, ISFPs, and this also includes ISFPs, FI heroes for some reason are so afraid of embarrassment that you can actually lord the risk of embarrassment over them in an attempt to manipulate them. We'll be talking about that in a second. That's one way to manipulate an ISFP. But the reason is that ISFPs have this thing, while they seek to be good people with their FI hero in the same way INFPs do, while they seek to be the good person and do the good thing, right? Especially when it comes to the art and the performance and what the message that their informative message that they're trying to convey about reality to cause people to think differently about it, so it becomes a call to action for change or positive change as a result of the art, hoping that their art will inspire action upon others. While they're doing that, it can be used for evil as well. Because ISFPs end up becoming these people that just look good instead of actually being good. Or they have this problem where it's like, oh, they're all about glory seeking, or they think they're only going to be getting lucky. I don't know how many times I've seen ISFPs in casinos like zombies just pressing that button on the slot machine that has literally no skill whatsoever and hoping, literally, NI child hope that they're going to get lucky. And that's funny. Because NI child, out of all the cognitive functions, is all about luck. It literally is liquid luck. It is. I mean, we're talking like liquid luck from Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, if you know what I'm saying. But that's the point. That's NI child, right? They end up having that. And then they end up believing that they have this spiritual connection with luck, which isn't actually like real per se. But they think that luck is this thing that's magically going to make them rich one day. And then their NE trickster, who's like, oh, I could reach out into the ether with my expert intuition trickster and look into the metaphysical realm and find that I'm going to be really lucky one day, right? As they keep pressing the button, as they keep giving over their money to the casino, and they end up losing. And I'm sorry, folks, but ISFPs end up becoming the biggest suckers. But guess what? ISFPs can actually sucker other people, and sometimes they're not even aware that they do it. Why? Because it's all about belief systems with these people. Because as long as you think they're good, as long as you think the ISFP is good, they're good, they feel great. As long as you think they're good, they're a good person, they're doing well, they're performing properly, it's all good, right? It's all good. Who cares? I don't necessarily have to make sure that I am doing a good job, that other people will value what I'm doing. I just have to make sure that people think I'm doing the good thing. How many times you walk around on the assembly line in your factory, which has ISFPs operating, and they're just looking busy. They're looking like they're working, when reality is they're not working. Remember that virtue and vice lecture that we did on ISFPs? Wait a minute. Idleness was their vice? Yeah, see, ISFPs can be the most productive out of all of the types, the absolute most productive, but they can also be the most idle. And it really comes down to whether or not they believe in what they are doing. This is why they have to have that creative freedom, and they have to have control with their ISFP ego and control with their ENTJ subconscious, because if they do not have control over the creative process, they will not be able to produce what they need to produce or what they actually want to produce. They have to have some semblance of control. Control is everything, right? And if things are getting out of control, it's going to inhibit their choice. At least they're not as controlling as ISTPs, believe it or not, because ISTPs use their ESTJ shadow to control everybody else, because if they don't, they're afraid that they're going to have their choice removed. But at least, and they do it with their shadow, but at least the ISFP does it with their subconscious. They're actually getting a lot of joy by leading from the front and leading the creative process for the sake of producing amazing art and having an excellent result, because they're results oriented. The ISTP doesn't care about the result. They just want their choice. They just want their movement. They just want their process. The outcome doesn't matter. As long as I get my choice, I'm good. At least ISFPs don't do that. Thank you, ISFPs. That's dope, So, also ISFPs have this funny thing that, like, you see those children, they're like, okay, because I can't see you, you can't see me, right? This is another form of thought manipulation that they do, but ISFPs have that attitude. They have this thing that, okay, if I just stop believing something is real, it's no longer real, okay? This is why ISFPs, through their thought manipulation, have such a hard time taking responsibility for their own actions. Such a hard time, because if they take responsibility for their own actions, that means, oh, it's real. What if people will think less of me because I'm falling on my sword and I'm taking responsibility for my actions? And it's very scary. It's extremely scary to ISFPs to take responsibility for their own actions. I actually had one on staff at one point in time, and we let him go because he just randomly disappeared and decided not to do anything and decided that he was completely unmotivated, whatever. And then as a result of that lack of motivation, he wouldn't even give me the opportunity to talk to him about it at all, because he was so ashamed. Gotta love that TE, inferior shame. He's so ashamed. He's too afraid to even face the music because he doesn't want to admit he's wrong, because if he admits he's wrong, it brings it into the SE realm where it's reality, and then he would have to feel bad about himself. And when he feels bad about himself, then he knows that he's obligated by his SI critic to take action. But how dare any ISFP become obligated, because then that would take away his freedom of choice, anti-child, which means he's being selfish. How many of you ISFPs out there are being selfish? Maybe you should take responsibility for your actions, and maybe you should be doing your duty, because how dare you put your freedom of choice over everybody else? Sometimes other people need a choice. That would be nice. What about the rest of us who are dutifully trying to make you feel good, showing you that we think highly of you, but you still refuse to give us a choice? And you refuse to take responsibility for your actions. What leads to people like me, SFJ, NTP Quadra, not interested in trusting you ever again. Not interested in giving you an opportunity to aspire with your TE and grant you status. grant you opportunities, right? Grant you a higher paying job, grant you everything that you need. And then all of a sudden, you little ISFPs find yourself in the ditch in life and realize, well, how did I get here? Oh, maybe it's because you are unwilling, as one of your largest hang-ups for this type, to take responsibility for your actions. It's selfish, and quite frankly, ISFPs, you can become spoiled brats real quick. Stop it. Get some help. So please keep that in mind. You know, if you don't want to be that person, well, stop trying to look good and actually be good. Because here's the situation. If you're going to have that attitude, guess what? The social engineer is going to come around and they're going to manipulate you into doing things you don't want to do. They're going to obligate you. They're going to force you to do things against your will. Oof. And then you're really going to be idle. Then you're really not going to get anything done. And then you're going to wake up at 50 years old, overweight, on the edge of getting a heart attack and wondering where all the time went. And it's like, oh, I didn't live life. I thought I was living life, because you live so much in the moment, you have no concept of time passing by, that all of a sudden you realize you have nothing left. You wake up tomorrow and it's like, oh, why? Because you could not have the humility necessary to admit fault, to admit or take responsibility for your actions. Let me tell you something, folks. A mature ISFP, an ISFP worth their salt, is an ISFP willing to risk shame as a result of taking responsibility for their actions. Because let me tell you something, folks. If they are not willing to shame themselves in front of other people and fall on their sword on their terms, I definitely will do it for them. And I will expose them for everybody. Oh, and they're going to feel so bad about themselves, but good. Maybe they become a better person, right? Maybe their art will become that much more meaningful. You know, what Jordan Peterson said in Chapter 7 of 12 Rules for Life, do what is meaningful, not expedient. ISFPs, you might want to listen to that. You just might. You just might. But hey, I really appreciate your art. I just wish your art was a little bit more meaningful. I wish you were being more productive than everybody else. I wish you were actually, you know, in the mood to do these things. But instead, you'd rather be idle. Instead, you'd rather just look good. You'd rather look productive instead of actually being productive and actually contribute. And then that just leads you to being a spoiled brat that no one trusts. And you wonder why you're alone, or you wonder why no one thinks highly of you. You wonder why you have no status. You wonder why you're not popular. You put so much effort in, you know, trying to make it big, hoping one day that you're just going to, you know, get lucky with your any trickster, that, you know, it's all going to fall in your lap one day. No, how about you work for it? How about you actually put in the effort and work for it? Keep that in mind, because if you don't, the ESFJ social engineer will come around and then you're screwed. And we're going to talk about just exactly how you're screwed. So let's talk about social engineering for a second here. So remember, I'm going to actually use the nice pink pen for this. Don't forget, folks, that the hero function is optimistic, and then we have the parent function is pessimistic. Child is optimistic. Inferior is pessimistic, and then optimistic as well for the nemesis, and then pessimistic for the critic, optimistic for trickster, and pessimistic for the demon. But do not forget the entire shadow or unconscious side of the mind overall is pessimistic, while the ego itself is optimistic. Don't forget, ego, the sides of the mind themselves have their own optimist versus pessimistic approach. The optimists are up here, the pessimists are down here, while each of the individual functions are also optimistic and pessimistic in their own right, and they have a primary and secondary equilibrium about them. So, how to social engineer ISFPs? Well, here's the process, folks. And the process is basically you have to emulate or be an actual ESFJ, because ESFJ is the highest compatibility with the ISFP, and they can read ISFPs like a book. And what's interesting about ISFPs is ISFPs are completely unaware of the intentions of other people, which leads them to be the most weakest to social engineering. Them and ISTPs are the absolute weakest of all the types to social engineering. It is what it is, folks. But especially ISFPs, they can be so easily taken advantage of, and their productivity used against them in such ways where, You know, you have that starving artist. You promise them great things and appeal to their sense of glorification, and then all of a sudden they're doing anything for you and eating out of your hand, and then all of a sudden you drop them in the dumpster afterwards, and they wonder what happened. And it's because, yeah, we made all these promises, but we never delivered. And then you're taking absolute sheer advantage of the little hope that NI child clings to, that it's going to get lucky and strike it big one day. That's basically a gist of what the ESFJ social engineer does to the ISFP, and it does it very easily. So the ESFJ shows up to the ISFP and is like, oh, look at you, little ISFP. I'm here to be supportive of you. I think really highly of you. My logical TI thinks so highly of your TE inferior. I think your art looks amazing. I always have a really good experience with my SI parent, is how amazing your art is. You're always consistent. I think you're fantastic. I always tell all my friends about you. TE inferior loves to hear when other people are saying, oh, I love to tell other people how great you are. Is really appealing to that vanity of the ISFP and puffing them up and being like, oh, I think you're so great. Anytime you use the word I think you're so great, I think you're great, it hits that TE inferior and makes that FI hero feel so good about themselves, even though that TI demon is not going to bother trying to verify anything that the ESFJ is saying whatsoever. Oh, yeah, it's like not going to work, but for some reason, like, it's a normal thing. I mean, I don't know why, but I mean, it just is, like, you know, for the greater good. Anyway, the point is that the ESFJ comes in, you know, and the ESFJ is like, hey, you know, I could give you choices. I can give you a better future. If you throw in your lot with me, man, I got your future handled. You're definitely going to make it big. I got a plan, you know, and you're going to feel great about it. And I'll always be loyal to you with my SI. I'm a very loyal person. I have a track record of being loyal. And I got your back. You don't have to worry about anything. I'll always give you what you want. You always have choices. You can do whatever you want. It's all the ball's in your court, man. It's all what you want. And I think so highly of you and whatnot. And like the ISFP just eats up this narrative and is completely unaware of what's even happening to them. Even though this type is an interest-focused type, and they're like, well, do they even bother to think about what the ESFJ is getting out of this situation? Nope, because they feel so good, and because their brain is literally on a high at this point. As those endorphins are definitely pumping after getting so much praise. Because guess what? You want to social engineer an ISFP? All you have to do is just glorify them. Manipulation via glorification, and that's what ESFJs do to ISFPs. They glorify them, and they even do it publicly, etc. But why? You see, it's a giant covert contract. See, ISFPs are weakest to covert contracts. And you know what a covert contract is? If you want to read about covert contracts, you can go to our ENTP friend, Dr. Robert Glover. He's all about explaining covert contracts in his book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, which, guess what? Most ISFP men by default are nice guys and have nice guy syndrome, which means they're going to be very unhappy in their relationships. Let's be honest, I've only met a few ISFP men who are not. And those ISFP men who are so afraid of reading and finding out things, finding out truths because they don't want to feel bad, so they rather have their head in the sand because they don't want to feel bad about themselves, because they don't want to be confronted with the fact that they may have to take responsibility for their own unhappiness, because the ISFP likes to blame everybody else, likes to blame reality and how horrible reality is, and likes to blame everyone else's success and living vicariously through everyone else's success, and the first one to point fingers at other people. But are they willing to look at themselves in the mirror and realize that they themselves are the problem? No. Statistically, not really, especially the immature ones. Even the mature ones struggle in this area, folks. It's a problem for ISFPs. It's a problem. And it's oftentimes why they get a bad rap, where people just tell them that they're stupid, which is technically very not true. Look at the brilliance of this art. A stupid person can't do this. This is brilliant. This work is brilliant. And Raylan's work is brilliant. If you want to check out Raylan's stuff, at Cajun Raylan on Instagram. Check out her work. Although recently she took down some of her paintings as her posts on her Instagram, and I was like, why did you do that? They're pretty awesome. But she might have like a different Instagram. Like I think it's like Paris Levy or something like that. But check it out. She does excellent work, and I hope to be the recipient of additional paintings in the future. But I do definitely enjoy these two, the Black Lotus and also the metaphysical forest burning in the midst of extroverted intuition, water in the bayou in New Orleans. So anyway, enter the ESFJ. It's all about going to deploy a covert contract. Now remember, different social engineering methodologies work on different types. Like, you know, for introverted intuitive, for most NI users, you want to use a Xanatos gambit. But specifically, even though you have NI child, because it's divine, sometimes NI child can find its way out mistakenly through a Xanatos gambit. Because it's just like a little kid, it's just kind of random with what it wants and whatnot. It's a little bit of more of a moving target. So, but at least you have the opportunity to hit them where it hurts the most, and that's through a covert contract. And ESFJs are the best type to deploy a covert contract, and it is an interesting form of manipulation. And it comes from this: I scratch your back, so I expect you to scratch mine, right? So all the ESFJ has to do is get to the ISFP and do a huge array of nice things for the ISFP, and then when it's all over, tell the ISFP, hey, I did all these nice things for you, but you've just built up a debt of niceties that you owe me. So now you have to do things that I need you to do or I want you to do, regardless if you want to or not, because I got you hooked to all those nice things now, and I'm gonna take them away. So if you don't do those nice things for me, well, sorry, you're not gonna get that from me. It's a covert contract, folks. A covert contract is when you do something nice for people. It happens in relationships all the time, where you do something nice for your partner, but then you expect them to behave in a certain way in response to you doing nice things for them. How about you just do nice things for them for the sake of doing nice things for them because you know they're your lover, right? That's what should be happening, right? Shouldn't it? Don't you think? Don't you think? But really, like literally, that's what should be happening. But for some reason, that's not the case. People always get so confused on covert contracts, and I'm just trying to figure out, okay, well, why is that the case? Ouch, got a little bit of a bite right here. Ouch. But yeah, actually, no, that's a burn. Excuse me. I was cooking some food earlier, and some grease kind of just jumped in the air and bit me right on the side of my arm. Anyway, so the covert contract, you go in to somebody, you do a bunch of nice things to them, and then you get upset at them for not doing anything nice at you in return. And by doing that to the ISFP, that FE nemesis gets in there, because oftentimes the ISFP worries to themselves. They worry about whether or not they are being selfish. And then the ESFJ, all they have to do is be super supportive, help the ISFP, help the ISFP, help the ISFP over and over and over again, and then be like, okay, now you have to do this thing for me. Now I'm going to force you against your will to do this thing for me, because if you don't do it, you're selfish. You're a selfish person. And then the ISFP is like, oh, I don't want to be labeled a selfish person. I'm afraid of being labeled a selfish person, so I'll capitulate and do that nice thing for you whether I want to or not. My SI critical kick in and force myself against my will to go help you or do this thing for you because you've been so supportive and so nice to me, so I'm going to do something nice to you. And all of a sudden they're manipulated into doing things that they don't want to do, like sell drugs or produce art or lie to people, for example, or force other people to go to a family event that even they themselves don't even want to go for the sake of the ESFJ, so the ESFJ can look good in front of people and be like, oh, look at my amazing family. Look at how wanted I look. Look at how valued I am, right? And I have such this great family, so I'm obviously, a very smart person because I have all these family here backing me up, because I'm affiliative and interdependent, even though the ISFP is pragmatic and independent, right? So understand that. There's plenty of scenarios for a covert contract, but there's plenty of scenarios for it. It happens all the time. And really all it is that ESFJ comes in, it's like, hey, I'm here to make you feel good. I think so highly of you. I'm going to increase your status. I'm going to let you do whatever you want, give you tons of choices. Your art is always a good experience. You're the greatest experience I've ever had. And I'm going to dutifully support you. I'm going to do your dishes. I'm going to clothe you. I'm going to cook for you. I'm going to do all these things. And because I do all these things, you better appreciate me, or I'm going to label you selfish. I'm going to label you with my TE rational demon, and you're a selfish person. You're selfish, 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 because you never help me. I'm always the one helping you, when guess what? The ISFP never actually asked for help. They never asked for help. They just saw the ESFJ offering that help of their own will. So who's the manipulator, right? See, that covert contract will come into play. And then all of a sudden, the ISFP, after they've been manipulated, after they've been completely taken to the cleaners, because, I mean, how often do you see the ISFP band leader, and then you have the ESFJ woman groupie show up, right? And then they get with the ISFP, and then the ESFJ, ends up pregnant or is expecting, to gain additional benefits and favors from the ISFP, and expecting the ISFP to be talking about her and her songs and all the like, and it's not about the music anymore, and the ISFP ends up feeling obligated to do these things by this woman of theirs all of a sudden, who came out of nowhere and covert contracted their way into being heavily involved in their life, even though they didn't even ask for that to begin with, but then they end up feeling like they're being forced to, against their will, to do this behavior, and it's harming their art, it's harming their team, it's harming the people they're leading with their ENTJ subconscious. And then the people close to them before this ESFJ came into their lives are starting to think less of them. They're feeling really bad. It's like their choice is being taken away, and then they just explode. And then they just this huge rage. And then all of a sudden, it's like, and then the ESFJ is like not willing to listen to them, doesn't even give the ISFP a voice, because it's like, you don't get a voice. You don't get a voice because I've done all these things for you and you're selfish. And because you're selfish, you don't get a voice. I'm not going to listen to you anymore. And then the ISFP feels trapped, powerless. And then they become idle. And then they just don't do anything. How many ISFP artists have stopped producing art, have stopped being productive specifically on that alone? It happens. Because if no one's going to think highly about what they are doing, then if the ISFP is not going to get any credit, well, because then the ESFJ social engineer is just coming in to hog, they're trying to hog all the recognition, leaving no credibility for the ISFP. And then the ISFP becomes very unhappy. They live so much in the moment, and they're not aware of the hostile intentions towards them, that this person could be after their money. And the ISFP, I mean, one of the worst financially capable of all the types. ISFPs and money management generally don't mix, unless they are aspiring with their TE inferior, which doesn't happen very often with ENTJ subconscious, because even ENTJ subconscious lacks self-discipline. Guess what? The ISFP just spends money and spends money and spends money and spends money, and is one of the most fiscally irresponsible of all the types. Where does the stereotype starving artist come from? I wonder why. And well, guess what? The ESFJ social engineer can know that can happen, and they can definitely, extract all of that money, all that value from the ISFP, and the ISFP will be covert contracted into giving up that money. It's so easy to covert contract them into basically doing anything. You just start doing all these supportive, nice things to them, have them pile up over time, and then accuse them of being selfish when it's over, and then all of a sudden that wallet starts to open out, and then comes the money, and then they don't even realize what they're doing when they didn't even ask for that help or that support to begin with. And they're completely open to this. They're completely open to this manipulation. ISFPs. How do you stop this? How do you stop this? Well, remember, you're interest-based. You have to think to yourself, if someone is giving so much to you, what are they getting out of it? Because no one is that giving. You are not that lucky. Stop trying to get lucky all the time. It's like that Daft Punk song, we're just here just to get lucky. And it's like, okay. Getting lucky. I mean, how many times do you see all of those ISFP men in bars, trying to just get lucky with a woman that night? How many times do you see that? You see it a lot. How many times do you see those ISFPs in the casino trying to get lucky, right? The casino itself is an ESFJ social engineering the ISFPs out of their money. By making them feel good, by making them feel lucky. even though it's a lie. But they can't tell the truth with lies. They have TI demon and they have TE inferior. It's all about belief. Well, that's your truth, right? Good luck telling an ISFP they're unlucky anyway, because they know they have NI child. Hey, I have NI child. That means I got luck, right? Yeah, but the problem is your NI child can be manipulated to go down this road and do things that you don't want to do as a result of being covert contracted into doing it. And imagine a covert contract deployed with a Xanatos gambit simultaneously. That often sounds like a casino, right? And then all of a sudden you're left with those ISFPs who don't have very much but pocket change left after they show up feeling like they're a high roller, you know, in a casino. And by the time they're done, they're at the slot machine, pressing the button, hoping to God they hit the jackpot so they can go back in again. Wow. Come on, be more fiscally responsible. ISFPs, if you would humble yourselves, if you would realize you're not actually that good, you're not actually that good of a person, and that you need to realize that you need to expand your mind, develop your belief systems, do some research and read. Actually spend time reading and self-improvement such that you become willing to take responsibility for your actions and realize you're not all that in a bag of chips. And if you can actually engage in that form of humility, then this person, this flatterer, because this is literally what an ESFJ social engineer is, a flatterer who are using flattery to get their way with you. This flatterer, you'd be like, okay, well, what's your agenda? You'll all of a sudden be aware that because you realize the truth that you're not really that good and you're not really that lucky, they'd be like, okay, well, what's that person's game then? If they really think I'm so great, what are they up to? They're trying to manipulate me. What are they trying to get out of this? Why are they helping me so much? ISFPs, are you really going to allow it to go to your head that, oh, everyone loves me so much, especially, you know, when you're famous playing that guitar on the stage and whatnot? You know, are you really going to let it go to your head that, you know, everyone thinks so highly of you and that's why they're supporting you so much, like because you're so popular? Is that really what's going to happen? No. See? Because an ISFP who takes responsibility for their actions realizes that popularity is nothing but something that is fleeting. It's vanity, it's worthless, a chasing after the wind, as Solomon explains in the book of Ecclesiastes. The wisest man who lived on the earth in history. Like, seriously, ISFPs, if you're willing to humble yourselves and take responsibility for your actions and look at yourself in the mirror and realize that you are the reason why your life sucks, then you would realize that you're not that good. And then as a result of not knowing that good, when someone's trying to flatter you and make you feel good, you're like, wait a minute, I know I'm not that good. What's their game? That is how you protect yourself from this form of social engineering. But do you have the humility required to do so? Do you? Do you really have the humility required to do so? I don't know. You might want to figure that out. Because if you don't, they're going to take your wallet, they're going to take your clothes, they're going to take your bed, they're going to take your house, they're going to take your children, and you'll be left with nothing. And you're going to wake up post 50 years old and wonder what the hell happened because you live so much in the moment that you're not even aware of how quickly time passes right before your eyes. Is that the future you want, NI child? Oh, but I thought you were lucky. Understand who you are, ISFPs. You're supposed to be the most moral of the types. You also have the potential to become some of the most intelligent, especially if you read and spend time to research. But you need to engage in humility. Do not let success cause that pride to come out. Take charge. Take full account of yourself. Understand who you are. Understand where your weaknesses are. Just because other people believe or they feign belief that you're a really great person does not actually mean you're a great person. ISFPs, you need to surround yourselves with people that hold you accountable, with people that will think less of you and tell you to your face. Or would you rather just stay ignorant and have your life full of yes men who say, oh, I think highly of you? You really want to be that ENTJ CEO with your subconscious one day, and literally at your firm all you have is yes men, and all of a sudden you realize your company is gone, completely taken away from you instantly? It's almost like the prodigal son. You ever hear about that story? Oh, it's just smart work, even though he was technically an ENFP, but that's like a whole nother argument entirely. Stop trying to manipulate everyone else into thinking that you're actually good, because when you do that, you're opening yourselves up to being social engineered, because people will just appeal to your pride and your vanity, your sense of status or popularity, and then they'll end up taking everything you have. It is written, those without even that will be taken away from them, and that's why. And this is why the more people have, even more will be given to them. No wonder the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and it's all because of pride and vanity. And it is very sunk deep within the ISFP. You have to let go of that pride, because a flatterer will come and they will glorify you, and then they'll take everything you have if you're not careful. Don't let that happen. Oh, but I can't see you, you can't see me. And then all of a sudden, even your bed and the clothes on your back are taken away from you. But you were lucky, right? You were lucky. Maybe you're lucky that you're here watching this lecture right now, getting some truth in your heads so that you can make some changes and get the flatterers out of your life and really have a real account about what your actual value is, and be willing to take some personal responsibility in your life such that you can avoid these social engineering attacks, because you're going to get covert contracted, and then when you have everything taken away from you, you ain't popular anymore. You're in fact shamed, and you'll be shamed indefinitely if you don't humble yourself. So please, ISFPs, humble yourself. Live in truth. Don't live the lie. Don't listen to other people who are just trying to puff you up. They have an agenda. Be careful. Do not let it go to your head. Thing is, it's easiest out of all the types for it to go to your head if you're not careful. So you have to do research. You have to expand your mind. You need to read. Read ISFPs, become something more, understand processes. Read that book, Lean Startup by Eric Ries. It was written by an ENTJ, or Principles by Ray Dalio. These books will definitely give you everything that you need to know to really start the process of proper self-assessment, so that you know how to properly value yourself, so that when you look in the mirror, you realize that you are your number one worst enemy. And then as a result of having that realization, you'll come to know the truth, which is you are not that great, and it's okay. Because through understanding the fact that you're not that great, you'll be protected from those flatterers who are come to take you for everything that you have. If you found this lecture useful, helpful, educational, enlightening, please subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, also on our podcast while you're at it. If you'd like to get your questions in for Q&A sessions or participate in our Q&As and live streams, please go to csjoseph.life/social, click on Discord, become a member of our Discord server. If you'd like to financially contribute to everything we're doing here at CSJ and being a part of this movement, please become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/csjoseph. Thank you very much for providing all of your feedback to those patrons out there, for getting our Patreon tiers figured out. We were able to eliminate some tiers and make some changes to everyone and bring a higher value to some of these tiers. And we have definitely more content coming. I recently just got this studio finished. We're actually going to be getting another light soon to improve the lighting. And we're going to be making some additional changes as we continue to upgrade what we're doing as we move forward together. So. Anyway, folks, with all that being said, I'll see you guys tonight.